So, Josh, what do you feel we should get a break to today?
Well, we give a break to all the hardworking people. A lot of jobs are opening back up right now. So shout out to all those guys going back, especially here in Vegas. It's a little bit biased for all these casino workers. So
for sure. So back to work on 3.
Let's do it.
Slumpbuster, episode 51. Back to work on 3, guys. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Quiet on the set. Make sure my mic is on. Aris, Dre, and Juju dog diving towards the pylon. Go for 2, so damn rude. Recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy. No way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction. Kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest. What's the basis? Pick an athlete. Let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places. Sudden death. Take 10 paces. Turn and shoot. Boys the truth. Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place. Dreams become reality. Low and outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
Back to work.
Back to
work.
Little delay there, I guess. But all right, guys, let's get into this. Let's rock and roll. It is time. 51st edition of the Slumpbuster Podcast. I'm your host, Juju Talk Sports. Welcome in my co-host, Aris Blakeney. He's going to be joining us today, the host of the Fantasy Football Pod. We just finished up all of our rankings of the top 24, top 26 players at each position. And then joining us also on today's show is Mr. Josh Lozano of the Benchwarmers and Burners Podcast. How's your day going out there in Vegas?
hot and dry, but casinos are back open, so we're just excited. We need some sports to bet on.
Exactly. Are you going to be playing some bets yourself?
You know, the only real thing that you could be betting on is basketball. I highly advise you not to do that until we see what kind of variants and variables with the AAU style playing. But if you guys want to go take some action on Korean baseball and or Russian ping pong, we got it.
Korean baseball. I haven't really delved too far into that depths. The main thing I kind of focus on whenever I watch Korean baseball is the bat flips are amazing. Just like throwing it to the moon. Like, is there kind of like a prop bet there as how high they can throw the bat?
No, not in Vegas, but probably some offshore books. They're probably taking numbers on that.
All right. I got to find that black market to place down those bets. But we have some interesting topics today. So obviously on Monday's show, we covered the NBA's reopening plans. Since the last time we recorded, a prominent quarterback at the NFL decided to make some comments that were deemed controversial. And, you know, since we're getting into the fantasy football season, we're going to get into a little bit of a mock draft here at the end just to kind of gauge where things are going if you guys are preparing for the NFL season. I think it's only fair that we open up with those controversial comments. Generally, we try and avoid the political landscape. We try to stay neutral, but every now and then a headline comes up that we have to address. What happened was Drew Brees was getting interviewed by Yahoo Finance and made these comments.
Well, I will never agree with anybody disrespecting the flag of the United States of America or our country. Let me just tell you what I see or what I feel when the national anthem is played and when I look at the flag of the United States. I envision my two grandfathers who fought for this country during World War II, one in the Army and one in the Marine Corps, both risking their lives to protect our country and to try to make our country and this world a better place.
Now, that obviously had a little bit of a backlash when it hit social media. Drew's teammates had something to say about it as well as many popular sports personalities, including LeBron James. In general, what was your guys' take when you first heard this, starting with Josh?
Well, you know, first thing I want to say is I'm a big journalism guy. So what makes this country so great is we have freedom of speech. So Drew Brees has the ability to express his opinion like that, whether people enjoy it or not. But I look at it like this. I don't agree with Drew Brees, what he said, and I don't condone it. But do I think he's a racist or do I think he deserves all that kind of stuff? No, man. It's just Drew Brees was just looking at it from his perspective. I definitely thought that Yahoo Finance guy definitely baited him into that question. I think he knew exactly what he was doing, asking Brees that on a finance channel. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He was going to get all the clicks. Set my man up right there. The thing about Drew Brees is he knew what was going to happen when he said it, but I don't think he really, really thought about it in the moment. My dad served in the military. My whole family did. I almost enlisted myself. And something that they taught me is it's your right as an American to sit or kneel for the national anthem. It's So if he wants to stand, that's perfectly fine. But I just think in the times that we're having right now and everything going, and we see how guys like Malcolm Jenkins was really affected, I definitely thought it was something that Brees should have maybe thought about a little bit more.
What about yourself, Aris?
I get where he's coming from. People are always saying, trying to gear the protest towards the disrespect for the troops, the national anthem, everything like that. But people forget Kaepernick first started the protest by sitting down, and then he had a conversation with an ex-Green Beret, so an ex-military personnel. And the guy told him that the sitting down is more disrespectful. So if you take a knee, you're still showing respect for the flag, but you're still able to get your meaning across. So he changed his protest to become more respectful for the flag at a Green Beret's request, or almost not a request, at a conversation he had with him. I think they said it was a couple of hours long. And I feel like that always gets lost in the spinning of, oh, they hate America, they're disrespecting the troops, they're disrespecting the flag, when in all actuality, he knelt to make it more respectful for the flag. So I always feel like that gets lost in the conversation, and people just try to string it to fit their ideologies and everything like that. But I feel like everybody sat down and delve into the actual protest. You'll see he made steps to make it more respectful. He made steps to do it peacefully, and now we're seeing kind of the backlash of not listening to peaceful protests, and now we're getting riots and everything like that. So
Yeah, part of my thing here is I feel like, Josh, you are right in the sense that it does feel like he did get set up a little bit with this question here. And I feel like context matters in terms of the overall answer to this question, because I feel like if he was asked directly, what are your thoughts on George Floyd, or what do you think of the current protests going on? That's a different story than what he was asked. He was asked his thoughts on generally the national anthem protest as a whole, and he gave his honest opinion on it. And that first half of the statement was only part of the equation. I think what gets lost a lot of times in this general debate that's been circulating the last 2 days is he went on to make additional statements in that regard.
So every time I stand with my hand over my heart, looking at that flag and singing the national anthem, that's what I think about. And in many cases, it brings me to tears, thinking about all that has been sacrificed, not just those in the military, but for that matter, those throughout the civil rights movements of the 60s, and everyone and all that has been endured by so many people up until this point. And is everything right with our country right now? No, it's not. We still have a long way to go. But I think what you do by standing there and showing respect to the flag with your hand over your heart is it shows unity. It shows that we are all in this together. We can all do better, and that we are all part of the solution.
Now, if you read that part in that and tie it into the first half, the overall statement, I feel, comes off with a very positive tone. In his initial thing, and this is the sentence that's getting a lot of people unbothered, is, I will never agree with anyone disrespecting the flag. But he never says something along the lines of, I will never respect someone for making that decision. And I think that can't be forgotten in this, because there's a lot of things that people do in society that I don't necessarily agree with, but I respect their right to do it. I think we can all agree to that part of being an American citizen is that you have the right to do whatever you want. And a lot of us will fall on a sword to die for that right, for you to express yourself in the way you choose. We may not always agree with it, but it is your right. And I do think that that's one of the biggest problems I have with the Drew Brees discussion over the last couple of days. It does seem like the attempt to bury the guy up until his public apology felt unneeded. It felt a little bit too much considering the legacy that Drew Brees has built up to this point.
The Green Beret, I'm glad you brought that up too. His name is Nate Bauer. He was an ex-Seattle Seahawk. But my issue with the Drew Brees thing is I do agree that it's if he didn't understand Kaepernick's message, you hit the nail on the head on it. If he didn't understand Kaepernick's message by now, after everything that's going on, it's any statement that he says now to me, and I know a lot of people seeing it, seems like it was just kind of damage control. But that's the thing. He might not have been damage control. He genuinely meant it, but that's just how it's perceived after saying that. I feel like Drew Brees should have been able to read the room a little bit better and understand. He could have been hey, I love the flag, but I understand this is what you guys are fighting for is real, and I'm not taking anything away from it. And I feel like that's just how people perceive. That's how I perceived it too at first, until I took a step back. I was pretty mad about what he said too, because it just felt like, Brees, you're not really you're not an ally, if that makes any sense. But to each his own.
Yeah, I just like disagree with just kind of like the idea, and this may be more of like a societal discussion as a whole, just like the attempt to like bury the guy's entire like legacy and everything he's done to this point, similarly like throwing the baby out with the bathwater with Drew Brees, because Drew throughout his career has shown exceptional like philanthropy efforts in the community of New Orleans. I mean, he just donated $5 million to coronavirus relief just a couple weeks ago himself. He came to a city that was predominantly African American, and what he's done in those communities basically rebuilt the city when it was going through its tragedy of the Hurricane Katrina and the fallout that kind of like came since. And then you look at what he's done abroad too, even to assist with people of color. So I think that the narrative kind of got switched also on like Drew Brees, because a lot of people were like, what does this say about the person as a whole? And I don't think it should be a whole indictment on his character, because we have the right to disagree on how we go about the protests. Maybe in the respect of the kneeling to the anthem, he disagreed on that being the right thing to do. But he never said that he didn't agree with what's gone on with the George Floyd stuff so far to this point. And if you read it just as he was answering that specific question that he was asked on a finance interview of all things, the apology was definitely damage control, but I think that the attempt to like bury him was a little bit overblown, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's just kind of what we've dived into now as a culture with cancel culture. You know, the second you disagree with somebody, bam, you automatically want to cancel them. You want to take their livelihood away. You want to take them off TV, sports, CEO of a business, whatever it is. And that's just how we are as a society nowadays. And I hate it, because everybody makes mistakes. Everybody deserves a second chance. So you can't just go, all right, he said something I disagree with, bam, let's cancel him. So I feel like people are taking it a step too far. Because if you do look at the whole message, he does say, I don't like the way he protested, but we have work to do in our society. We are a broken society. There's stuff we have to do. The people who fought for civil rights have just as much rights as we have now. But hey, I didn't like the way he went about his protest.
Yeah, and cancel culture does have a little bit of an insidious nature, because it's just like, if you disagree about the way we go about something, then your whole legacy could come into effect. Like, if he didn't make that apology, who knows what would have happened with his NBC deal the second he retires? You know, would NBC still have put him on as a potential commentator next year? And there was even the calls on social media for him to retire. Like, come on, are we being serious right now, guys? But Drew made a statement that on this one segment of the issue, maybe he disagreed with, but it doesn't mean that he disagrees with the cause as a whole. It's not like Drew Brees is out there rallying for like police brutality or anything. He's just saying, I didn't agree with how the national anthem protest was presented, but I think that we can, as a culture, unify. And I do think that cancel culture does have a little bit of like a role. Don't get me wrong. If someone's being overtly racist or making like a statement that is just absolutely calling for violence or anything of that nature, yes, we should have the right to say that person, they shouldn't be allowed a seat at the table in terms of civil political discussion. But if someone just disagrees with us in this manner, which Drew Brees did, I don't see why we can't build off that discussion and have an honest discussion. Because part of having that honest discussion and believing both parties are coming to the table in good faith.
Yeah. The thing, though, that like my last thing about the Drew Brees thing, and the thing that rubbed me the wrong way is, yeah, Drew Brees, he's a great philanthropist, did a lot after Hurricane Katrina for New Orleans. I used to live there too. I have a lot of friends that in Bossier City area, Shreveport area. So we were talking about this, but the thing that rubbed me the wrong way about Drew Brees too is he said he will never, ever, keyword exactly, never respect someone who disrespects the flag by kneeling. And that's what just really rubs you the wrong way, because it wasn't the whole George Floyd thing. We could do word gymnastics and be like, oh, he didn't say this about George Floyd. Oh, he didn't say this about Black Lives Matter. But it's like, man, it's like, if you just don't understand why Kaepernick did it, even just you saying that, like, you'll just never understand. And then you using because it's like, a lot of us had family members that fought in the war. And then for some of my friends, their family members, when they came back, they had stories of their grandpas. I know people were saying it too, like Shannon Sharp, more publicly, because I don't want to be sharing like my personal friends' information. But that's just what really rubbed me the wrong way too. It's just like, if Drew Brees is one of those guys that a lot of people look up to, I look up to, especially being Louisiana area. And it's like, Drew, all you had to say was, man, I understand. So just, I will never respect someone who's really, I think Brees stumbled on it, but I don't think he's racist. I don't think he's like a horrible person or anything like that. I just think that he was a little ignorant right there.
Yeah. And, we're all going to have our moments like that as well. Like Josh, you and I, we both have podcasts. We both talk for multiple hours in a given day. I'm sure at some point, like in doing that, we're going to say a statement that doesn't necessarily like fit the mold, or fit like what everyone agrees with. And I think that it's just important for us, if we're going to have like these discussions, that we can have them open and honestly and not be at constant fear of like just getting completely thrown under the bus. Like I feel like Drew was. I mean, I believe Drew's apology. I believe that Drew, in his own mind, is acting in good faith. I don't think he's a bad actor behind the scenes. And I think we'll move past this. I mean, a lot was made over how is this going to play in the Saints locker room. I think it will play just fine. Michael Thomas, who was critical of him, he's already like, they've already come together on Twitter and like basically said, hatchet's buried. They've had team meetings for the Saints that basically said, we're good to go on that front. The Saints will be fine. I mean, I've said the Saints won't make the playoffs. That's just a football take there. But that's just my own hot take, and maybe people would bring that up against me when the Saints have a 12-4 season, and I'm just left clutching my pearls on that one. But I guess moving off of that one, let's get into the other big news of the day. So it's official now, and couldn't come at a better time, but the NBA will be returning to us on July 31st of this year with 22 teams coming back. It was passed with a 29-1 vote. Only the Portland Trail Blazers were the lone dissenter in that one. I'm guessing they probably took Dame's argument to heart in that regard. And, well, I'm thankful for it. We finally have at least a plan in place of one of the 3 remaining major sports, because baseball's still twiddling their thumbs right now. The NHL has a plan, but it's not official as of this moment. So congrats to Adam Silver that he finally got something done, because all these other leagues aren't having the same amount of success. What did you think of the 22-team playoff as a whole? How do you think it's going to play out, Josh? Are you still leaning that Lakers-Bucks finals that everyone's been kind of envisioning?
Yeah, so what's interesting about the 22 playoffs is it's going to be a huge advantage for a lot of these younger teams, because that playoff atmosphere, especially too, because you get shell-shocked that first time you go into that crowd. So I think a lot of these younger guys, but I think it's going to be interesting. I think this helps out the Clippers a lot more too, essentially because you had guys that were heading the final stretch after the All-Star break, a little hobbled. Guys like Patrick Beverley were coming off an injury. Paul George, who barely had about 2 months of actual games if you combine everything holistically. I still think genuinely, I think it's going to end up being the Bucks or the Lakers, but I think the Clippers and the Raptors are 2 teams that you can get a lot of value on if you're going to be betting them in individual games, just because the Raptors were projected to have a better record than they were last year, and they had Kawhi Leonard. And all those guys too is they won an NBA championship, so they're not really they're not going to be, oh, we're not good enough, because they were last year, and they're almost going to be they had a chance to be the lock-up second seed. So we'll see. I think there's going to be just so many variables, and they're going to be 5 to 6 games back to back, and these guys' routines be messed up. There's none of that. Okay, mentally we can give up this game because we're going to go back home. There is no home. Like you're going to be a hotel. You're going to see the guy. You're going to see like Bam Adebayo, the guy that you've been guarding, just going up the elevator with you. So it's a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting, that lack of home court advantage. I'm interested to see how that 8 seed in the West shakes out, because we talked about it, and obviously, like, thank you again for the video package you put for us on our 50th show. We talked about the potential of Zion squeaking into the playoffs. Now, as it stands, you're going to see Blazers, Pelicans, and Grizzlies compete for that 8 seed right there. Out of those 3 teams, do you think the Grizzlies can hold off the potential competitors there, or do you think that someone's going to squeak into the playoffs?
So what makes it interesting about the Grizzlies is if this was the original NBA season, the Grizzlies were going to have one of the toughest schedules. Well, the Pelicans had actually one of the easiest ones. But then now you take that all away because all of this, it's just like a Fugazi now. You're just playing against the teams that were there. So now that that's eliminated, I think there's still a good chance that the Grizzlies could actually hold it because now they're going to have guys that they didn't have before who were healthy. Now they're going to have Justin Winslow, who they just had that trade for where they traded Iguodala and Jay Crowder and all of them. Now they're going to have him, Jaren Jackson Jr., who was having a phenomenal sophomore year, by the way, who was hurt. He wasn't playing. Now you have Jaren Jackson, you have Ja, and they have a good chance. My thing is, though, is the Pelicans, we just saw a glimmer of what they look like at full power with Zion, Lonzo, Drew Holiday. It's going to be tough. I still like the Grizzlies, but you kind of have to give it to the Pelicans. I feel like with momentum and everything that's happening their way, and my only thing that might cause it to not happen is I just feel like sometimes Alvin Gentry kind of has a Mike Budenholzer syndrome where he a little bit mismanages games, especially near the end. Mike Budenholzer is a phenomenal regular season coach, coached at great Atlanta Hawks Hawks team where they had the 4 All-Stars. Guys like Jeff T, Kyle Korver were making an All-Star game because of Mike Budenholzer. But when the playoffs happen, Mike Budenholzer doesn't deliver, kind of like how Alvin Gentry does in the regular season or playoff games when he had those great teams with Anthony Davis.
Where do you stand on the idea of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving coming back and potentially trying to make a run with that Nets team? About 400 days of rest if you're KD coming off that Achilles. You have 8 regular season games left to play before you get into the full postseason mix. Is it enough?
I've heard reports that Kevin Durant isn't going to come back. He said he doesn't. And just knowing his this isn't off anything based. This isn't like no analytics, no nothing. This is just like my personal opinion on KD's mindset and his mentality is I just don't see him coming back. No, he genuinely cares about the opinion of others, like to a fault. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're humans. I care. You care. That's what we do. Like we look at people's reviews. But KD, I don't see what his incentive is. Because if he comes back and he looks bad in a high intensity playoff game, everyone's going to be like, oh, KD's washed. And then or reverse, what if he comes back and does well? Does he genuinely think a team of him and Kyrie are going to be good enough to really push a Bucks, Raptors, Philly, Boston, or Heat team? I don't know. Plus, I know that they're doing some kind of weird things in the Nets internally. It's kind of like the players are making the moves because I know Kyrie, KD organized a players meeting and they were talking about trading for Beal, which they're making them. It's like the players are running the team over there. That's why you hear the whole Dinwiddie where it's like, oh, Dinwiddie's not going to be on the roster next year. I think that they're going to reload, try again fresh next year with all them.
Yeah, they're still coming off of obviously firing Kenny Atkinson towards the end of their regular season there. It's insane how quickly things turn in the NBA sometimes because Kenny Atkinson was looking as a young, promising coach the previous year with what he did with that Nets team. And suddenly 2 stars like KD and Kyrie Irving get there, and he's out before the season even ends. And while they're still in the playoff mix. But if both those guys were able to play, hypothetically, you mentioned the Raptors. Do I think they're a better team than the Raptors potentially? That's hard to say because Pascal has really come into his own this year. Obviously, Kyle Lowry, the veterans they have on that roster, terrifically coached team under Nick Nurse. But stars win these playoff rounds. Stars win championships. And as much of head cases as KD and Kyrie are, they're stars. There's no disputing that. Now, I'm sure KD has something to say about you because Benchwarmers and Burners, I assume, is probably a little bit of play on the Kevin Durant headlines of a couple years past. Am I right, Josh? Are you fess up to that one?
Yeah, but also just in general, all these athletes like AB with his burner, you could always just tell because the way that they defend themselves is just hilarious. That's why I just had to play on words for that.
That's okay. I mean, I have my burners myself. Aris, do you have any burners?
Yeah, I have like 1,700 of them. I just run around just talking bad about everybody and playing myself up.
So crowning a champion is going to be interesting too because another thing about this restart plan is the last potential games would be in October, which could be a challenge for them in terms of television ratings just because they could potentially conflict with the NFL. Mm-hmm. Do you think that we'll ever get back to a normal NBA season in the wake of this? Because it's going to be very difficult unless they shorten the season or move some stuff around severely. We're having the NBA draft lottery also in mid-October as well. Seems like it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, they definitely are going to want to not have these types of games in the future in October. But NBA, and I know you and I talked about this before, but the NBA has always wanted a way to get rid of those October and November games because now if you're looking at it, October and November is going to be the end of this season, but normally October around Halloween time is the start of the NBA season. And those games are utterly almost meaningless compared to America's sport and juggernaut that is the NFL, followed also by college football, who's also a giant ratings generating. So if there's a way now that they can just reset it where the NBA, it's not the NBA's fault. It wasn't Adam Silver just kind of like swaying a wand. They had to do this, but they always wanted an excuse. They just could never find it to move the season closer to Christmas, which is the non-traditional start for real NBA fans. You wake up, you got the 9 games on and everything. You usually got like the players are already warmed up. They already got 2 months of experience under their belt. So I don't see the future ending date being in October, but I can definitely see from now until forever the continuing starting date being always around Christmas, around December. I think they might shorten the season or they might do something a little finagling to try and make it so that the whole window is avoidable from football, their end of the season to football's beginning season.
That will be a challenge too to begin the season this year if they do decide to begin then the following season around Christmas time, given the NFL actually does have the nice little luxury that it's going to have a Christmas Day game this year based off how the schedule was built. And yeah, you're right. We did talk about this on your other podcast. By the way, go check it out. Benchwarmers and Burners Podcast featuring Josh Lozano here. Fantastic show. Fantastic host.
Thank you.
Hey, I'll give you your shameless plugs before we give your shameless plugs at the end. But it does bring an interesting challenge in viewers' minds what the NFL will want to do if they're just going to have that like one game, the nightcap, or if they're going to directly go head to head with some NBA games in that regard. Because, then at that point, you're talking about not only Christmas Day games, but you're talking about the beginning of the NBA season, which has a little bit of meaning depending on who's playing. That's when you're typically going to try and get your best matchups going, your Bucks, Lakers, your Clippers, Lakers here, all those that will basically bring eyeballs to television sets everywhere. It's going to be challenging. Adam Silver has been trying to find this formula for years of what's going to get ratings going as, the NFL has just become more and more of, like you said, a juggernaut, especially college football, because you could argue college football is a top 4 sport over even the 4 pro leagues in America. But all right, I think that will wrap it up for the NBA. Obviously, I'm excited to see it. July 31st can't come soon enough. Honestly, I kind of wish it was actually like start of July rather than end of July, because that's still about 2 months we're looking at basically. But get what you can take, right? Hey guys, it's Juju Talk Sports here, and I think it's time to have an official product unboxing for the brand new Lawnmower 3.0, brought to you by Manscaped.com. Now, Manscaped is the #1 in men's grooming. Below the waist grooming, I should clarify. But as you see, this is a brand new razor. So, the most I got to worry about right now is this 2-month quarantine beard growth. I think it's time to just, go back to normal here. So, learn this trick via Instagram. Should be really easy. See, all you got to do is turn on some catchy music and turn on the machine. And just as simple as that. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with Manscaped.com. Promo code SLUMP. Josh, are you a big fantasy football fan?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't dabble as much as I should, though, but still a fan. I'm all ears right now.
Gotcha, because we have our host of the Fantasy Football Podcast, Mr. Aris Blakeney, the fantasy Aristotle himself here on this show. Aris, like I said, just finished up his top 24, top 36 positional rankings. We had some awesome guests, Fantasy Geniuses, Bryduck and the Snowman, Fantasy BS. And we just finished up with the Wire FFB. All great conversations, all very re-listenable, especially because we're still waiting on training camps and all that stuff. So not much of change in the rankings. I advise everyone to go back, check out those rankings so you're most prepared going into your mock draft season. But we are actually going to be having a little mini mock draft. Now, Aris, general philosophy when you're going into these drafts, what are you looking for?
Especially in the first round, I'm looking for a guy that I can, the term that we use in the fantasy world is set it and forget it. You can set him in your lineup and you don't have to worry about him until a bye week. Unfortunately, injuries do happen, so sometimes that will mess up your plan. My case in point, this is the first year that my first round pick made it the whole season. Injuries do happen, they do nuke it, but generally in the first and second rounds, you're looking for those top 2 guys on your team that you can plug in and you can just forget about them until their bye week comes around. So that's generally what you're looking for when you're picking in the first 2 rounds.
Okay, so my idea here was, because we're going to have some episodes here in the next 2 weeks where we're going to do some live mock drafts for the audience. If you actually want to participate, we may open up a few slots for our listeners to hop in there and kind of draft against us. But with that said, we're just going to test it out. We're going to get prepped. We're going to get ready for this. We're going to have a little mock draft just between the 3 of us, snake draft. Now, deciding who gets to draft first, that's going to be an interesting thing. How should we do this? Rock, paper, scissors? What are you guys thinking?
Man, why don't we just let the guest go first?
Okay, let Josh go first. Okay, I'll guess we'll let Josh pick Christian McCaffrey, but it is what it is. Fine, hey, Josh, you go first.
You might go weird because
you might go weird.
People pick some weird stuff. A couple years ago, first overall pick Andrew Luck in my work league. So
poor guy.
If it is a money league, I actually do encourage you to keep that guy in your league.
$100.
Exactly. You just got to keep feeding the pot at that point. So yeah, okay, we'll let Josh go first, and then we'll do a little rock, paper, scissors to figure out which of us are going 2-3 from there.
Well, I think you do have to go with McCaffrey. I'm a believer of if you have a top 2 or 3 pick, and don't take my word for it, I'm more of a fantasy basketball guy, but you always got to go with a running back. I won my league last year because I did the no running back strategy where I didn't pick my running backs until like the 5th and 6th round. I ended up with Austin Eckler. So I just feel like if you can't get one of those top 3 guys, for me, it worked out personally. Just load up on wide receivers because at some point, one of those guys are going to hit. Like I got Cortland Sutton way late, and then he ended up being a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could see the line of thinking. I personally always feel better about my teams whenever I have a solidified running back there. But the idea behind zero RB is, of course, running backs get hurt, and they get hurt a lot more than their wide receiver counterparts, which is just an unfortunate truth of fantasy. So, Aris, I guess we got to go here on the rock, paper, scissors here. So, 3, 2, 1.
Scissors.
All right. Let's do this again. All right. 3, 2, 1. Come on. All right, so we've tied twice. Let's see here. 3, 2, 1.
You won.
Son of a bitch.
Nope. Dang it.
Okay,
just pick one.
There has to be a better way. All right, Josh, here's how we're going to do this. Closest number to the number you're thinking of in your head. 1 through 10. I'm going to say 7.
5.
Ooh, I picked 8, so.
Oh, Julian.
Perfect. Okay, so drafting number 2 overall. Who do I think is going to have the biggest season here? Like I said, I generally feel better about my team whenever I load up on those running backs in the early rounds. I think the Giants offense is going to be a little bit better this year. So I'm going to just go ahead and say Saquon. Talk about his massive thighs 1,000 times, and the guy gets it done in fantasy. He's good for at least 50-plus receptions each year. He's a multi-dimensional back. So I like him out of the 2-hole. Aris, you are on the clock.
So then at 3, since there was a slight run at running back, I will go Zeke. He's going to have those big games, and then there's generally one time a year where he kind of putters out. He's also going to be healthy this year. No suspension worries linger, so Zeke will be the 3 spot. And then since Snake is going on, the 4th pick will be Mike Thomas, just a PPR monster. He just gobbles up all of the targets down there in New Orleans. Plus, he did make amends with his quarterback, so look for him to continue the 160 targets share that he had last year.
Okay, so we're snaking at 3. Okay, then I'm just going to double down. I'm going to get another big-time running back here at this spot. I'm going to pick up Alvin Kamara this year. So, having a nice 1-2, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara. I like that lineup. Give it to me day in and day out, especially if we're in a PPR league. A minimum half-point PPR. I guess we make the rules in this fictional draft that we're crafting up by ear. So, Josh, go ahead. You got 2 picks back-to-back.
All right, so got my running back here. Normally, I know a lot of people say you got to double load up on the running back, but I would love the chance to get Michael Thomas. But if you can't, I think that he had an underrated season, and I think that they're going to be a lot better. So you got to go with Julio Jones. He was super serviceable. If you had him in the playoffs or if you just had him in the later season, he really delivered. Kind of started out slow in the beginning of the season. He was one of those guys where you were sitting there like, oh, man, did I just waste my 1st or 2nd round pick on Julio and all these other receivers are exploding? So that's who I'm going with my 2nd one. My 3rd is I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill. I'm just going to get another wide receiver. I'm just going to load up on that.
All right, Tyreek Hill. So I am back on the clock. Now, as far as in terms of the available wide receivers, because I'm feel confident right now at running back position as is, I'm going to see someone who's going to have another big year. I am going to go with Devontae Adams out of Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers still loves this guy. And if you consider that last year he was just dealing with a turf toe injury, if he's healthy, he's one of the most dynamic wide receivers in the league. He's always good for at least 100 yards or a touchdown, give or take. And that's the kind of consistency I think you need in fantasy sometimes. So Devontae Adams, give him to me in the 3rd round here. All right, back-to-back for you, Aris.
All right, so he's going to get hurt, just the nature of the beast. I like Dalvin Cook. He's a beast when he does play. Last year, I doubled up 1st round, 2nd round with C-Mac and Dalvin Cook, and I dominated my family league. So I'll go ahead and go Dalvin again. And at this point, might as well just go continue the running back run and just pick up Mixon. It does sound like they're closer to a contract extension. So at this point, it doesn't worry too much. I'd worry a little bit more down the road if they haven't come to that contract extension because he might hold out. So just keep an eye on that situation.
Okay. Well, given the context of this draft here, I'm going to go a little bit off the beaten path here and select someone that I think is going to give me an advantage week in and week out at this specific position. So I'm going to select Travis Kelce here. And I think if you equate this back to a normal draft, this would be around the start of the second round, which is appropriate range in which you would start seeing George Kittle or Travis Kelce go. Kelce is consistently at or above 100 receptions for this team at 1,000 yards. And he's one of Patrick Mahomes' top red zone targets. You look at the other wide receivers on this team, Tyreek Hill doesn't nearly get that same level of red zone production as Kelce does. Give me Kelce. We're just going to fill out a starting lineup here. So go ahead. You got back-to-back picks here, Josh.
All right. For running backs, as we're filling out the starting lineup, I already got my 2 receivers. Got to go with Nick Chubb. It's going to be very interesting, the duo tandem of him and Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt kind of came back and poached some stuff. But I think with all the offensive weapons, especially they just got the new tight end, the new shiny toy, I hope Baker Mayfield's able to figure out that offense. And I think he'll be pretty serviceable. And then going with that, you got to go with tight end. I'm going to go with Kittle. I had him on my personal team. It's just someone familiar to me, and I just really like the way that the Niners always just set him up, just put him in good positions to win.
Well, I can't believe you guys let me get this guy still on the board here, but chalking him up in an air raid offense with a dynamic passer in Kyler Murray, give me DeAndre Hopkins. Bill O'Brien doesn't want him, but I sure as hell do. Add D-Hop to my starting lineup. So now at this point, I have him to match up with Adams. I like that core here. Aris, give me one of your picks, and then we'll just kind of do a quick rule recap of where we're at right now.
So I only have 1 receiver, 3 running backs. So I'm going to take the best available receiver, which is still a phenomenal receiver at this point. Chris Godwin. I mean, he's going to get arguably the best quarterback throwing to him, those precision routes and everything like that. I feel like he's going to be the guy to own down there instead of Mike Evans. So Godwin will be my man.
All righty. So just a quick little recap here. So Josh at this point has Run CMC at the top. Second running back is going to be Nick Chubb. We have a wide receiver tandem of Julio Jones and Tyreek Hill and George Kittle at tight end. Myself, I'm running out Saquon Kamara. My wide receiver is Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. And then at the tight end slot, I have Travis Kelce. For Aris right here, we have Zeke and Cook are your starting running backs. Flex position, you're going to put out Joe Mixon. And then at starting wide receiver, you have the combination of Michael Thomas and Chris Godwin. All great choices. None of us have drafted a quarterback to this point, and I think that is always a valuable lesson for modern-day fantasy quarterbacks. There's a ton of them. Don't draft them early. Even if you miss at Patrick Mahomes, trust me, the ADP is going to work out. There's plenty of options later on. So with that said, Aris.
All right, so now we will get into starting to fill out some of these other positions. Do I want to go tight end or do I want to go another flex? Don't be that guy that picks a defense this early or a quarterback.
I should say we're only doing the starting lineup here. So
only starting lineup? Okay,
yeah,
so are we doing one flex or 2 flexes?
Just one flex.
Just one flex. So then I got to go tight end, which would be the best available, will be Ertz down there in Philly.
All righty. So Zach Ertz is off the board. So right now, I still need to fill out my flex spot. Looking at available guys on the board, I'm in between a couple guys, but I think I am going to go with a guy who was a little bit of a workhorse last year. He's going to be in a sophomore season. We've seen a lot of sophomore running backs take that next step. So go ahead and give me Josh Jacobs out of Las Vegas. So from Josh's backyard there, we'll see how he does this season. I like him. I like him in the silver and black, and John Gruden certainly likes to use him. So give me Josh Jacobs to fill out my flex. You have back-to-back picks, Mr. Lozano.
All right, man. So my big advice too in fantasy is don't take my advice unless it's fantasy basketball. But my next pick, what I'm going with, filling out my roster, right? I'm a big Matthew Stafford kind of guy. I feel, especially ever since he had that game-winning touchdown drive as a rookie. Doesn't mean I'm drafting him, though, but I'm going with Kenny Golladay. I feel like he was a phenomenal pick. He was a sleeper. I just also a big believer that you just load up on wide receivers because it works for me. And like everyone says, if it works once for you, it must work every single time. So.
Okay, so Kenny Golladay going into that flex role. So you have one more pick. You have your tight end spot filled. You have 2 running backs. The only remaining positions you have to fill out is that quarterback, kicker, and DST spot.
All right. I could go, since we're talking about the Raiders, I could go a Raiders pick here and just pick a kicker early. But no, if you got to go with Mahomes. I just feel like there's any quarterback, if you ever get the first choice of a quarterback, it has to be Mahomes regardless. So maybe you can make that pick. But I think with especially 90% of their offense coming back to continuity, people are doing virtual training camps and that kind of stuff. I think that the fact that they have so many guys coming back and Clyde Edwards, I just feel like we're going to see Mahomes at a level that we haven't seen. Every season we keep saying that, and he just keeps coming back with more.
So with myself on the clock right now, when it comes to the quarterback discussion, personally, I have Mahomes ranked over Lamar Jackson myself. But given this point in the draft, I'm going to take Lamar just because his rushing floor is still so high compared to other quarterbacks, and it's always going to give him week in and week out fantasy production, even on his worst throwing days. So Lamar Jackson is going to be my starting quarterback. Back-to-back.
So since you guys both went quarterback, I am not going to go quarterback because I'm going to fill out my defense and kicker because you guys can't pick a quarterback next round. So I can do this because, the way the room worked out.
Bending
so I'm going to go
for your advantage. I like
San Fran as my defense and Greg the Leg as my kicker in Dallas. I like that position that he is in this year with that high-flying Dallas offense. And he's going to be kicking in a dome for the majority of the season. So Greg the Leg looks pretty good this year.
All right. I am going to go at my DST spot because I still firmly believe, regardless of whether you're in a 3-man league, a 12-man league, or a 15 or 16-team league, that you always go DST and kicker as your last two picks. Go ahead and give me that Bills defense. I like the idea of them playing in that AFC East, going against Jarrett Stidham a couple times, going against whoever's playing at quarterback with the Dolphins a couple times, and, the Jets, Adam Gase. Let's be real here, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and chalk up that Sean McDermott Bills.
That's a great pick. I was going to go with that. But since you took the Bills, have to go with the Steelers here ever since they added Minkah Fitzpatrick. Plus that front line, you convinced me a little bit too because you came on the show. We were talking and I was like, are the Steelers going to be as good as you think? And then you spoke some words of wisdom, did a little research, and I think so too, especially being in the AFC. That's always just a nice benefit. Going back-to-back, got to go with the kicker. Going to go with Will Lutz just because we don't know what's going to go on in New Orleans, but there's one thing that's consistent is that they got a good kicker. I'm going with him.
Hey, dome kickers in fantasy, that's the most analysis you could honestly give at the kicker position.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, I'm going to go with the second half of that fantasy analysis. If you can't get a dome kicker, at least get someone in a high-scoring offense. So I'm going to go with Harrison Butker because we know one thing about those Chiefs. They can score, and they can score from anywhere on the field. Butker himself is good for about a 50-yard kick every now and then. So hey, he's probably in that top 3 of elite kickers. So, Aris, you are on the clock. You just need to fill out a quarterback spot to round out your team.
So this is going to be the guy that I chose to finish as the number 2 quarterback over Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott. So I had Mahomes going 1, Dak going 2, Lamar going 3. So he was second in the league in passing last year. I can see with the weapons that they added that he can continue to do that. Let's just hope he signs his damn contract.
Well, you know what I love about the Dak Prescott pick? I feel as though that's a guy you can get in later rounds in fantasy because a lot of people are going to be sleeping. Hey, I agree with it. I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm.
That is why you wait at the quarterback spot. You're not going to get as lucky to draft them with your last overall pick. But certainly let's review these teams. And if you're the listeners, weigh in on which team you like better. So for Mr. Josh Lozano of the Benchwarmers and Burners Podcast, his team rounds out as such. At the top spots, Run CMC, Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill, Nick Chubb, George Kittle, Kenny Galladay, Patty Mahomes, the Steelers defense, and at kicker, Will Lutz. My team, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins, New in Arizona, Josh Jacobs, Lamar Jackson, Bills defense, and Harrison Butker. And for the fantasy Aristotle himself, we have Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Chris Godwin, Zach Ertz, the Niners defense, Greg the Leg Zerline, and Dak Prescott. Be interesting feedback. Out of these teams, did you guys like your own little picks? Did you like one of these rosters a little bit better?
You always have to like your own pick. Like, you can't like somebody else's roster. Just Can't do it.
Fair
You
enough.
sell yourself. You always sit there when you're drafting and you're like, man, this is trash. But when you hear the names, you're like, man, why am I not a GM?
Yeah.
That's what happens every time.
I think that's why I like fantasy so much. It gives me that like perception that I'm actually doing something with my life and I'm successful. So it's like if I'm doing well in the game, I'm doing well in real life. So, it's kind of sad to say, but that's my truth. All right, Josh. Well, a question we ask all our guests, of course, on the show is favorite sports movie all time. Go for it.
Oh, favorite sports movie all time. Well, I mean, like, you could always go with the classic, like, Air Bud, but I think you got to go with Remember the Titans. I just feel like it's always a movie that you can just put on regardless, even though you know exactly what's going to happen. I feel like that about Sandlot, too. Benny the Jet, somebody that I wanted to grow up. I wanted the shoes. I wanted to be getting chased by dogs. I just had no excuse to go climbing in people's fences, but Remember the Titans is just the classic, especially with everything going on. Highly recommend you go check it out. If you haven't already, you're just selling yourself short.
Very topical, very good choice. I mean, it's a popular choice on the show. I think you're about,
Vast
I would say
majority.
I think we're double digits on Remember the Titans, and I'm okay with that. It's a good movie, but I do appreciate the Sandlot reference. I myself wish I had some PF flyers. That scene in itself, the chase sequence, top tier, elite blue chip scene in all of movies. All right, Josh, where can people listen to you? Once again, like I said, I want to thank you for that awesome video package. It really added to our 50th episode. And I would say hit this man up. He does some outstanding work.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on. You guys do phenomenal work. For all your listeners out there, really appreciate them because you guys don't understand how much work people put in, especially these guys, though, because they give you everything that you need from fantasy, football, basketball. I'm just one man, so I understand you got to give them all credit. But you can check me out at I'm on Apple Podcasts, basically all the streaming platforms. It's Benchwarmers and Burners. Go check it out. And then also same thing, that's all the Twitter handles is at the BnB pod. We do a show every Tuesday. I just have a revolving set of guests, sometimes former athletes, a lot of sports bettors, fans, and then sometimes other podcasters, just like these great fellows.
We love working with you, Josh. We'd love to come back on your show. We'd love to have you back on ours. Aris, for your next show, why don't you tell the listeners what they can expect from the Fantasy Football Podcast moving forward?
Pretty much we have already done our rankings, so now we are into mock draft season. So we're just going to roll out some mock drafts for you guys, maybe a little bit later on once we get closer to training camps and preseason. We'll do another set of rankings once everything kind of shakes out. But right now it is mock draft season, so let's mock, baby.
All righty, guys. Well, you know where to find us at Slumpbuster Podcast on Instagram, at Slumpbuster Pod on Twitter, iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review. We really appreciate it, guys. We've finished 50 episodes, but we're looking for 50 more. We're looking for 100 more. We just need your guys' support to keep on going. Stay safe and stay healthy, and we'll see you on the next episode.